When you see a sudden movement in the shadows at dusk, your brain makes a split-second calculation. It assumes you are being watched. For 30 years, this basic cognitive reflex, a predator detection instinct, has served as the definitive textbook explanation for why humans across almost every culture ever studied believe in unseen, intentional agents, gods, spirits, ancestors. But that textbook consensus is fracturing. A growing number of active researchers argue the field's most famous theory is built on a foundation with almost zero supportive empirical evidence. This is the cognitive science of religion. It is an academic discipline rooted in psychology and evolutionary biology that maps the specific mental architecture underlying belief. This field does not adjudicate whether any specific religion is true or false. It treats the near-universal human tendency to form religious belief as a natural phenomenon and asks a strictly scientific question: what exactly is the human mind doing to generate it? We are going to bypass the outdated textbook answers and map the messy, real-time scientific debate currently fracturing this discipline. Hit subscribe to follow this arc into the actual science of human cognition. The existence of religious belief across thousands of distinct cultures is a predictable feature of human cognitive architecture. How that architecture actually works is something we are only just beginning to accurately map. The most influential theory in the cognitive science of religion was introduced in the 1990s by psychologist Justin Barrett. It is called the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device, or HAD. This matrix shows the evolutionary logic behind the theory. An early hominid hears a rustle in the tall grass. They have two options: assume it's the wind or assume it's a predator. Guessing wind when a predator is present is fatal. A false negative removes you from the gene pool. Guessing predator when it is the wind just costs a moment of alertness. Natural selection heavily favored a brain wired for false positives. Researchers took this localized predator detection wiring and extrapolated it. They argued that a brain operating on a hair trigger for hidden agents would naturally interpret unexplained events, a sudden thunderstorm, a localized illness, a streak of good luck, as the intentional work of unseen beings. HAD became the standard model. Then, a 2025 paper published in Religion, Brain, and Behavior formally challenged it, stating plainly that the theory has garnered several strong critiques and virtually no supportive empirical evidence in 3 decades. The empirical gap highlights a deeper conceptual flaw. HAD describes a system tuned to detect physical, localized threats. It completely fails to account for the formless, omnipresent, non-physical deities described in actual religious traditions across the globe. Researchers are now looking at parallel cognitive quirks. Psychologist Deborah Kelemen documents a distinct mental habit she calls promiscuous teleology, the brain's tendency to map purpose and design onto impersonal events. You see this clearly in children. If you ask a young child why a rock is pointing to me, they will often say it's so animals won't sit on it. They will say clouds exist specifically to create rain. They treat nature as if it were designed with a goal in mind. Assigning deliberate function to natural phenomena creates a very short cognitive bridge toward assigning a hidden agent behind that design. Detecting hidden agents and assigning purpose to random events are documented cognitive biases, but they are insufficient. A brain glitch explaining a rustle in the grass does not explain why communities organize complex, multi-generational belief structures. Anthropologist Pascal Boyer shifted the focus entirely. Instead of asking how unseen agents get detected, his research asks why certain supernatural ideas survive while countless others are immediately forgotten. This spectrum graphs Boyer's theory of minimally counterintuitive concepts. The most culturally successful supernatural ideas sit right in the middle. They keep all the ordinary rules of physics and biology intact, but break exactly 1 or 2 core expectations, like a human being who can read minds, or who exists in 2 places at once. Hitting this specific cognitive sweet spot makes an idea remarkably sticky. It is easy to mentally simulate, making it highly memorable and easy to pass along accurately across generations, unlike an idea that breaks dozens of rules and becomes too chaotic to hold in mind. This framework has broad support, but it runs directly into an unsolved academic debate informally known as the Mickey Mouse problem. A walking, talking mouse perfectly satisfies the rules of a minimally counterintuitive concept. It behaves exactly like a human, violating only a tiny fraction of biological expectations. It is highly memorable, and it transmits flawlessly across cultures. Yet, Mickey Mouse never became an object of religious worship. Human memory biases explain why a supernatural concept is contagious. They cannot explain why a community will organize its entire existence, its moral codes, and its resources around one. To answer that, the scientific framework has to move outward from the individual brain and look at group-level function. This is the foundation of psychologist Ara Norenzayan's Big Gods theory. This network models early human societies. In small hunter-gatherer bands where everyone knows everyone, cooperation is easy to enforce. Informal social monitoring and gossip quickly identify and punish cheating. A cooperation crisis hits when a society scales up. Once populations grow beyond a certain size, anonymity increases. Informal reputation networks break down, cheating goes unpunished, and trust collapses. Norenzayan's research argues that belief in a powerful, moralizing, all-seeing agent, a deity who watches and punishes selfishness even when no human is looking, provided a highly scalable solution to this exact crisis. Stop and think about that purely as a cognitive science question. Independent of your own personal faith, do you find this cooperation-based explanation psychologically convincing? Let us know in the comments. For these large-scale beliefs to actually enforce cooperation, they require a mechanism called credibility-enhancing displays, or CREDS. Verbal doctrine is cheap. Humans are significantly more likely to adopt and maintain a belief system only when they witness community members undertaking hard-to-fake, costly actions, fasting, enduring physical hardship, or sacrificing tangible resources in the name of that belief. The evolutionary function of moralizing gods may have very little to do with explaining the natural world. It appears to be a mechanism for generating the deep social trust required to build large civilizations. To combine the individual brain biases with these societal scaling theories, researchers rely on a framework called dual inheritance theory. This model treats human behavior as shaped by two interacting systems. The first system is biological. Cognitive quirks like agency detection and memory biases provide the inherited raw material. The second system is cultural evolution. Specific doctrines, rituals, and institutions are built on top of that biological raw material, passed down through learning and imitation, and shaped by their own distinct evolutionary pressures. This two-layer model offers massive explanatory power. The scientific trade-off is that it is notoriously difficult to isolate and test in a controlled lab setting. This brings us to the fundamental schism currently fracturing the field of cognitive science of religion. Researchers are cleanly divided into two camps, byproduct versus adaptation. The byproduct camp, often called the standard model, argues religious belief isn't an evolved trait at all. They view it like reading. Just as humans repurpose visual machinery to decode text, religious cognition is an accidental side effect of mental systems that evolved for completely different survival purposes. The adaptationist camp rejects that. A 2022 paper in the British Journal for the Philosophy of Science explicitly argued that religious belief and ritual were directly favored by natural selection because they provided concrete functional benefits for group survival. Whether religious belief is a biological accident or a direct evolutionary blueprint is not a settled textbook fact. It is a genuinely unresolved scientific argument among active researchers. The adaptationist camp is currently finding support by moving their evidence out of theoretical brain models and into the physical bodies of participants. Anthropologist Dimitris Xygalidis studies group ritual. By tracking the heart rates of participants during intense synchronized rituals, like firewalking ceremonies and communal chanting, Xygalidis' team measured a concrete biological reaction. The shared rhythmic activity actually synchronizes the participants' heart rates with each other. This triggers endorphin release and creates measurable, self-reported social bonding, providing hard physiological evidence that religious practice yields real survival advantages for a group. But any attempt to measure the mechanics of belief is met with intense scrutiny. This field aggressively polices its own boundaries, which is clearest in the controversy surrounding mentalizing research. In 2012, researchers Will Gervais and Ara Norenzayan proposed a link between a reduced tendency toward religious belief and a reduction in mentalizing. the capacity to intuitively model other minds, sometimes discussed in relation to autism spectrum traits. That specific claim drew immediate and severe methodological pushback. Researchers Margiana Lindemann and Anthony Jack, among others, dismantled the claim, arguing the original study suffered from poor variable controls and inaccurate measurements of belief. The infighting is the point. The intense pushback proves that the cognitive science of religion operates as a strict, self-correcting science, resisting blanket statements about human cognition. We know there is no single God instinct. Belief is the inevitable result of overlapping cognitive mechanisms, hyperactive agency detection, memory biases for counterintuitive ideas, cultural transmission, and group survival pressures, all operating in tandem. The fact that foundational theories are actively contested is exactly what an honest scientific field looks like. They are attempting to reverse engineer human architecture, not validate or attack the existence of the divine. But mapping the psychology of belief leads directly into an even deeper historical puzzle. In day 159, right before God, we will examine whether human morality itself required religion to exist at all.